Engineers in California this morning are struggling to develop a plan to remove huge amounts of debris after a devastating landslide.
The landslide that has closed this scenic road is a monster that is still growing.
The California coastline just did something impossible. At 3:47 a.m., while the world slept, 400 meters of solid ground vanished into the Pacific Ocean, not gradually, not with warning. In one thunderous instant, a stretch of land that had stood firm for 12,000 years simply ceased to exist. But here's what makes this truly terrifying. Every single monitoring instrument recorded absolute silence. No tremors, no shifts, nothing. The ground gave zero warning before it fell into the sea. What happened next would challenge everything we thought we knew about how the Earth behaves. Because when scientists arrived at the scene, they discovered something that shouldn't exist: evidence of a geological process that has no name, no precedent, and no explanation. The first person to witness the impossible was Highway Patrol Officer Daniel Martinez. He'd been cruising south along the empty stretch of Highway 1, a route he'd driven hundreds of times before. The night felt ordinary until a sound emerged from beneath the Earth itself. Martinez later described it as thunder, but not from the sky. This was deeper, more primal, as if the planet was clearing its throat before delivering devastating news. His dashcam footage would become the most watched geological event in history. One frame shows an intact highway stretching into the darkness. The next frame, void. No transition, no gradual crumbling. The road simply ended where it hadn't ended a second before. Martinez slammed his brakes, stopping just meters from where the asphalt dropped into nothingness. His radio call, preserved in dispatch recordings, captures pure disbelief. The road, it's gone. Not damaged, gone. The collapse had swallowed everything: guardrails, road signs, drainage systems, and a massive chunk of the cliff face itself. Then, as suddenly as it began, the thunderous sound stopped. Only the distant crash of waves against fresh rockfall remained. But the truly unsettling part was yet to come. Residents living miles inland reported waking to what sounded like a freight train running beneath their homes. Windows rattled, picture frames fell, and then silence. Not normal quiet, but an oppressive absence of sound that felt wrong. One resident, Maria Gonzalez, told investigators she knew something terrible had happened because even the crickets stopped chirping. As emergency crews raced toward the scene, seismologists at the California Geological Survey were staring at their screens in confusion. The network of sensors designed to catch the slightest ground movement showed something that made no sense: absolutely nothing. For 2 full days before the collapse, every seismometer had recorded a perfect flat line. Not even the background vibrations that constantly ripple through the Earth appeared on their instruments. Dr. Sarah Chen, lead seismologist for the region, pulled data from 47 different monitoring stations. GPS units accurate to millimeters showed zero ground deformation. Tilt meters sensitive enough to detect a coin placed under one leg registered no change. Strain gauges embedded in the bedrock reported normal readings right up to the moment of collapse. The implications were staggering. Either every piece of equipment had simultaneously failed, or the Earth had found a way to destroy itself without giving any measurable warning. This absence of precursor signals violated everything geology textbooks taught. Major ground failures always announce themselves through micro-earthquakes, slow deformation, or changes in groundwater flow. Scientists have built entire early warning systems on these predictable patterns. Yet here, nature had rewritten the rules overnight. The historical record made the event even more baffling. Indigenous oral histories passed down through coastal tribes for thousands of years contained no mention of sudden land loss. Spanish mission records dating to the 1700s documented earthquakes, tsunamis, and landslides, but nothing resembling instantaneous coastal deletion. Geological surveys from the Gold Rush era showed this exact stretch of coastline surviving the massive 1906 San Francisco earthquake without significant damage. For 12,000 years, since the last ice age, these cliffs had endured everything nature threw at them, until now. As dawn broke over the Pacific, Emergency Response Coordinator Maria Alvarez stood at the edge of catastrophe. The new cliff face dropped straight down, raw earth and rock exposed like an open wound. She had less than an hour before high tide would begin destroying evidence. Her team of geotechnical engineers clipped into harnesses and prepared to descend the unstable face, knowing that whatever they found might explain the impossible. The collection protocol was strict. Every sample bagged, tagged, and GPS logged before leaving the site. Chain of custody had to be perfect. If they were documenting a new geological phenomenon, the evidence needed to be bulletproof. The first samples came up strange. Pale, glassy crystals embedded in the debris looked nothing like the typical coastal rock. One engineer radioed up that the material felt wrong. Too light, too porous, like pumice but with an oily sheen. Racing against the incoming tide, the team managed to extract 23 samples before waves began lashing the lowest debris. The last climber scrambled up just as saltwater surged through the collection zone. Within 2 hours, those samples were under analysis at the state laboratory, where they would reveal something that deepened the mystery even further. Dr. Elliot Kim had analyzed thousands of geological samples throughout his career. Nothing prepared him for what emerged under the electron microscope. The pale crystals showed a structure unlike any known mineral in the geological database. The lattice pattern was intricate but wrong, full of microscopic voids that made the material incredibly fragile. X-ray diffraction produced peaks that matched no mineral on record. The composition leaned heavily toward magnesium and sodium, but with trace elements that shouldn't exist in California coastal geology. Most disturbing was the porosity measurement, nearly 40% empty space. This material could never support the weight above it. If this substance had somehow formed beneath the coastline, collapse wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. But how had it formed? When? And why had no one detected it before? Dr. Kim's team ran the data through national and international databases. No matches. They were looking at either an entirely new mineral or evidence of a geological process science had never encountered. The implications sent chills through the laboratory. If this material existed elsewhere along the coast, how many more collapses were waiting to happen? Back at the collapse site, geophysicist Marcus Lee deployed ground-penetrating radar along the closed highway. The technology could peer beneath the surface, revealing hidden structures and voids. What appeared on his screen made him rerun the scan 3 times. A corridor of emptiness stretched beneath the remaining ground, running parallel to the highway for nearly 60 meters inland. The void started just 8 meters below the surface, shallow enough that the overlying weight could trigger catastrophic failure at any moment. The radar signature was unmistakable. Something had hollowed out the earth from below, creating a hidden chamber that left the surface unsupported. But the edges of the void were strange, not sharp like a cave, but fuzzy and gradual, as if the solid rock had been slowly dissolved or transformed. Salt contamination in the soil blocked deeper scanning, leaving the true extent of the underground anomaly unknown. Lee's discovery triggered immediate action. Emergency teams expanded the evacuation zone as they realized the collapse wasn't finished. The ground that looked solid might be nothing more than a thin shell over emptiness. Survey stakes appeared on lawns, spray-painted marks showing invisible danger zones beneath family homes. The risk maps looked like a spreading infection, yellow zones of caution expanding into red zones of immediate danger. Dr. Annika Shaw from the USGS faced a room full of terrified property owners. Her presentation showed cross-sections of the coast that looked like Swiss cheese, voids and low-density zones honeycombing the subsurface. These weren't normal caves or erosion patterns. The boundaries were diffuse, the shapes irregular, and the distribution followed no known geological principle. "We're seeing something new," she admitted, her scientific caution barely masking deep concern. "The standard models don't apply here. Whatever process created these voids is ongoing, and we don't yet understand how to predict where it will strike next." 3 additional coastal segments showed similar underground anomalies. Each represented hundreds of homes, businesses, and infrastructure elements suddenly teetering on uncertain ground. The weight of a truck, a heavy rain, even foot traffic might be enough to trigger the next collapse. Insurance companies began canceling policies. Property values plummeted overnight. The solid California coast had become a ticking time bomb. By 7:15 a.m., the governor declared a state of emergency. Evacuation orders went out to over 200 addresses. School buses rerouted, power lines cut, National Guard units deployed. The legal battles began immediately. Homeowners sued the state for failing to detect the threat. The state pointed to the unprecedented nature of the event. Lawyers circled like sharks, sensing blood in the water of uncertainty. One attorney's statement captured the collective fear. These families bought homes on what they were told was stable ground. Now they're refugees from their own property, victims of a disaster the state should have seen coming. But how could anyone predict something that had never happened before in recorded history? The scientific community mobilized resources from across the globe. Specialists in everything from mineralogy to quantum geology converged on California. The pale crystals from the collapse site were subjected to every test imaginable. Isotope analysis suggested rapid formation under conditions that shouldn't exist in coastal environments. Fluid inclusions hinted at temperatures and pressures that made no sense for shallow crustal rocks. One theory emerged that sent shockwaves through the geological establishment. What if the mysterious mineral wasn't formed by known Earth processes? What if they were witnessing the result of a completely new type of chemical reaction, triggered by combinations of factors never before seen together? The theory was radical, unproven, but it fit the impossible data. Meanwhile, the human cost mounted. Families in temporary shelters, businesses destroyed, communities torn apart by invisible threats beneath their feet. The psychological impact was profound. How do you trust the ground when it might vanish without warning? How do you rebuild when nowhere feels safe? Monitoring equipment now blankets the California coast like never before. Sensors probe deep, searching for signs of the strange voids and anomalous minerals. But the instruments that failed to predict the first collapse offer little comfort. Scientists admit they're learning to detect something they don't yet understand. It's like trying to forecast weather on an alien planet. The old rules don't apply. The pale crystals continue to defy explanation. Laboratory after laboratory confirms the same impossible result. A mineral that shouldn't exist, formed by processes that aren't in any textbook. Some researchers whisper about connections to deep Earth chemistry, about reactions that might occur where nobody has ever looked. Others wonder if human activity somehow triggered a natural process that lay dormant for millennia. Today, 3 coastal segments remain under urgent evacuation orders. Thousands of people live in limbo, not knowing if their homes will exist tomorrow. The scientific investigation continues around the clock, racing to understand the threat before it strikes again. Property lines drawn on maps mean nothing when the Earth itself refuses to follow the rules. The California coast hasn't just lost 400 meters of land. It's lost the comfortable assumption that solid ground stays solid. Every cliff edge now carries an invisible question mark. Every bluff might hide a void waiting to swallow whatever sits above. The instruments watch and wait, but they're looking for something they've never seen before. What makes this truly terrifying isn't just what happened, it's what might happen next. Because if the Earth can fail without warning once, it can do it again and again. Until science solves this puzzle, everyone living near that coast exists in a state of perpetual uncertainty. The ground beneath their feet might be solid rock, or it might be a shell over nothingness, ready to thunder and fall. The pale crystals hold their secrets. The voids continue to hide. And somewhere along the California coast, the next impossible collapse waits for its moment to rewrite the rules once more. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.